Hi, everyone. So the holidays are coming up. Thanksgiving is just a few days away in the United States, and Christmas and events like Hanukkah are right around the corner. And these are typically times when we're going to be interfacing physically with more people. It's often a time where we get together with friends, more friends than usual, and family members. And if we don't do that in person, we do it online. We do it by on the phone, and it's actually a prime time for negative emotional responses to be triggered. Certainly, lots of very positive emotional responses can occur during these holiday events, but just as frequently, negative emotional responses are triggered as your relatives and friends and sometimes even service people, at stores that you're shopping at, that type of thing, do what's called push your buttons. They do something or say something, and with friends and relatives, this might be a long-standing pattern with these people where they do something or say something when you get together that pushes your buttons, which means triggers negative emotional responses in you. Those might be hot buttons like anger responses. Those might be depression responses. Those might be fear responses. But very often, the people that we're the closest to are the people that seem to have the capacity to serve as those triggers more readily than strangers. And so it's good to be mindful of that right now as we go into the holidays. What you definitely want to avoid when you do get triggered is stuffing those emotional reactions. The ideal would be not to have the emotional reactions in the first place. The emotional reactions are triggered by belief codes being activated always. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, just so you understand a little bit more about what is often happening on a subtle energy level that does cause this hot button response where you have such an immediate and strong reaction to something that logically really shouldn't set you off quite like that. I'll share a little bit of information to you about the behind the scenes stuff that's going on that can amplify these reactions so dramatically, and also just can open up the belief code packages, which are really the root of the problem. But when you get triggered, and belief codes are being triggered, that's what causes the emotional response. When you get triggered, one of the things that's very, very important is that at the very least, that you don't get into a habit of stuffing what it is that the emotional responses that you are having. Ideally, we eliminate what causes the triggering in the first place. But if that hasn't been done yet and you're still having the reactions, you want to start by acknowledging that you're having the reaction, and rather than just stuffing it down, not that you necessarily want to explode right in front of your friends or your coworkers or your relatives, but you want to, as quickly as you can at a later time, after you get out of the environment, figure out how to better manage those emotional states and don't just stuff them down. It's very common in relationships with friends, with family members, or husband, wife, children, that something will irritate us or will depress us or whatever, and we just don't want to deal with it. We don't want to create a conflict, a state of disharmony, and so we just get really, really good at stuffing it, and that can be really, really bad for your health. A lot of research has been done on the impact of negative emotional states, whether you hold those negative emotional states, or have them chronically, or whether you have them periodically and stuff down that emotional energy and never actually manage it and release it from your system. This can lead to elevated rates of, it can increase the likelihood of heart disease, high blood pressure. I just finished a big event called the Sedona Gathering, and the focus was all on longevity and positive aging. And one of the things I shared with the group, because I did all this research in advance of the event, was that, and I was stunned by this statistic, 48.5%, 48+% of the adults in America have heart disease. Now, that's like half the population, which is stunning, I think. And then we know that things like diabetes and all kinds of autoimmune diseases are also on the rise, but 48% plus of the adults in America have heart disease. The bulk of that is a byproduct of high blood pressure, and that can very much be linked to not effectively managing emotional states properly. So, bottom line, when you stuff down, when you have negative emotional reactions, that's going to create things like inflammation in the body. It's going to set off imbalances in your biochemistry, all kinds of things. But when you stuff the those feelings, they don't just disappear. They just sit down there and they eat away at you and ultimately cause disease. So you want to get out of the whole stuffing thing. As the title of the video says, stuff your turkey, don't stuff your emotions. I want to share with you, they're kind of humorous now as I look back on it. If they weren't humorous at the time, byproducts of stuffing emotions, because it doesn't just stop, it doesn't just end with health effects. When you have negative emotional responses, and behind each of those negative emotional responses are belief codes, all of this working together has a causal capacity to produce negative effects in every single aspect of your life. So not just health, it can impact unknowingly. You can be impacting your emotion, your financial state. You can be impacting your career development. You can be impacting unconsciously, impacting all kinds of other experiences and attracting to you things that you would otherwise like to avoid. Certainly, the stories I'm going to tell you, I would have preferred to avoid. So here you go. When I was, I'll kind of start at the beginning. It won't take me more than a couple minutes to tell you the stories. But when I was, this has to do with stuffing anger. When I was probably, I would say, I was in my maybe early teens. My mom was married to a guy who, my stepdad, who she later divorced. But anyway, I was dealing with a situation with a mom and a stepdad that were fighting all the time. And my mom was kind of the champion of the fights, and she was a brutal fighter. And when they would get into the fights, the verbal abuse that would happen and all that, it would just, I was a sensitive kid anyway, and uh, it would so upset me. And I remember sitting on a bar stool one time, and they were at it, and I got so angry at what was coming out of her mouth towards my stepdad, who I didn't even really like that much, but I was so angry at the content of the communication that I almost fainted. I got dizzy and almost fell off the bar stool. And I got my composure, and I thought, oh my gosh, you are just letting this affect you way too much. You have got to stop feeling angry like this. And in that moment, I kind of commanded my system, my whole self, to just stop it, to just stop reacting to what they were doing. And I very successfully, in that moment, stopped feeling anger. I just flat out stopped feeling angry, effective that day. And years went by, and I thought I had gotten into some metaphysical stuff, and I was studying power of thought and a little bit about emotions and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought I was doing this spectacular job of managing my emotional state. I did not connect any kind of dots that I was stuffing any kind of negative emotional reactions at all. And it could have been that, but in fact it wasn't that. I had managed in a moment to become an incredibly effective stuffer of that particular type of anger that I felt that day. Doesn't mean I never got frustrated or irritated or anything like that, but that particular type of anger that I felt that day, I just flat out never felt again. And I just thought I was kind of saintly, actually. And I was just doing a good job with managing my emotions, but I wasn't managing my emotions. I was stuffing. So years go by, and I probably create all kinds of things that I wasn't aware of. But these two events I was very aware of, and eventually led to the kind of curing of that significant emotional imbalance. It started off with I was involved with an organization here in Sedona. And I'm not going to get into all the details of who it was or whatever, but bottom line, it was a situation that just was infuriating. I mean, it was what was going on. I was having a very difficult time it needed to be changed, and I was having an impossible time actually changing the situation. And it was slowly brewing a state of rage within me. Rage is a form of anger, I believe, where it's really at the root of it. You don't feel like you have control, or you don't feel like you can shift a circumstance that really needs to be shifted. And but anyway, I was, staying calm, looking calm on the outside or whatever. And one day, an event occurred, and it just threw me over to the top, over the top. And I hear Miss Sweet little, helper, soother of conflict situations. I just lost it, and I just exploded. I mean, just exploded. And the energy that issued forth from me was so incredibly strong that it actually lit my truck engine on fire. It caused a fire to occur in the engine of my truck. And what had happened is I had this blowout. I was just furious. I got in my, and I was very aware I was angry. I got in my truck. I started driving, and I was smelling something. And I got down to the gas station. I kind of calmed down a little bit, but I smelled this kind of burning. And I stop. I pull into the gas station, forget my troubles for a minute, ask the guy to, I think there might, I smell something. And I can't get my hood open to see what it is. And it smells like it's coming from the engine. And he opened up the engine, and he came back, he called me Missy. And he said, Missy, he said, wow, he says, your engine's been on fire. And I hit. And apparently the kind of locking of the hood had snuffed out the fire. There wasn't enough oxygen to keep it going. But that's an example of how powerful thoughts and really strong emotional energy. In this case, it ends up being decades of stuffed anger energy, because the event that happened that triggered that response didn't just open up all the feelings I'd been stuffing about this organization and the situation I couldn't change. It actually, so I discovered later, because I knew how to work with emotions and learned how to work with emotions, learned how to work with belief codes that cause the negative emotional responses. It really tracked back all the way to that day that I was sitting, and probably events before that, but that day when I was sitting on that bar stool in my house, and the kind of rage that I felt in that situation, because it was a similar type of feeling where I could not control what was going on in the environment. And anyway, so it was very telling, but it gets worse. I light my truck engine on fire, and about a month later, I calm myself down. I do these exercises to, I am aware at that point in time. I'm surprised by the anger response, but I don't connect the dots at that exact moment that it relates all the way back to that event when I was much younger. And I calm myself down, I clear or balance what would be called trapped emotions, so I think, and blah, 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 blah. So about a month goes by, or 2 months goes by, and I go on a business trip. I come home, and I find, now I have not totally cleared everything that's going on, because I'm still upset by this situation with this organization, but I am again doing a pretty masterful job at stuffing what's going on, thinking that I'm just doing a good job of balancing myself, and it actually was not true. I was releasing trapped emotions. I was calming myself down, but I wasn't getting to the root of the problem. And anyway, the long and the short of it is I went on this or maybe it was a 30-day business trip, came back, and walked into the house, and went back to my office, which was in a second bedroom. And the floor in the office was completely, I mean, it was probably like a 2-foot bubble, like a wave in the floor. And I said, what in the world is this? And I walked into, next I kind of followed the track of the flooring. It was all kind of soft and springy like this. And I said, oh my gosh, this feels like maybe some kind of water leak situation. And it ended up, it was the hot water line in the wall behind the bathtub faucet had apparently a teeny pinhole leak that maybe for a long time that expanded while I was away. And it not only completely destroyed the floor in that bedroom, but I was gone long enough where this water was spraying out and soaking up into the sheetrock, and it turned the whole bathroom into like a sponge, and the water just continued to absorb into all that sheetrock. The long and the short of it is I had to have the complete bathroom gutted. Everything had to be pulled out, and the whole bathroom had to be redone. So it cost many thousands of dollars to fix this, and that was kind of just the straw. That was it. And I said, "Oh my gosh, you just are not clear. You're just thinking, that you're doing so great, and you cannot possibly be clear and attract an event like this. So let's get down to business and figure out what is the root of what you are attracting, because hot water, fire, and hot water are symbols of negative emotion, especially anger. And I was not clear of the anger, so that led me to do a belief code work I already knew how to do at that time, and I just really took some time. I did some in-depth belief code work. I found the root cause of the problem, which actually even preceded the bar stool day. I went back to an event when I was like 6 years old, found all that and cleared all that out, and that was the end of that. But what happened when I cleared all that out was very interesting, because I found that I was having more frequent, I was having anger responses to things that I could feel. I went all those years without actually being able to feel it. And it ended up that me being able to feel the anger responses was a really good thing, because that's your heads up that you've triggered belief codes, and that you aren't in balance, and you need to do something about that. So I tell you that story just to emphasize how stuffing year after year after year after year in the moment might make you feel better, might alleviate you from the stress of the conflict of being mad at someone, or frustrated or irritated or whatever it might be, or whatever it might be, emotions like sad or again depressed or something like that, or afraid of something, getting anxious when you're in communication with someone else or when you interface with someone else, that all those things, left unchecked, can really will lead. It's not can lead, it will lead to negative outcomes in your life, and those negative outcomes will most certainly affect your health, but in all likelihood are going to affect other areas of your life, just like the story, hopefully not as intensely as the story that I just told you, but it can get to that level if you're a master stuffer. So get busy with it. Now, I want to take a couple minutes in this video and just talk a little bit about what about these triggers, what is going on. Well, one of the reasons I was getting so upset with that organization is because I was doing a form of projecting. So I was every time the folks in the organization did the things that were creating anger in me, what was happening is I wasn't as angry as them, as I wasn't as angry at them as I thought. It was all about them, but it really wasn't. It was really about way back and other events, that every time they did that thing that they did that would set me off, it was triggering a much bigger situation that had been much more traumatic in my life, and that had created a much bigger nest of belief codes that then had the potential to trigger negative emotional responses. So that every time they did something, it was waking up that barstool event. It was also waking up a 6-year-old event, and all of that was then being projected onto this organization and the people and the players there, and greatly amplifying how I was reacting to them. Had those other situations never occurred, and it was really just what they were doing, the level of emotional response would have never, the emotional reaction would never have been as strong. Maybe it wouldn't even have happened at all. But one of the things I found in my now decades of work with belief codes, and watching when people get triggered by the codes that awaken, is that a huge percentage of the time when someone pushes your buttons, or some event or some organization, some politician on TV, a huge percentage of the time when that happens, it has little to nothing to do with the person who's actually who you think is the trigger point. It has to do with stuff in your past. That could be past lifetimes. That could even be stuff in your ancestors' past, because a huge percentage of our belief code inventory is actual belief code archives are actually inherited. About 80% of your belief codes are inherited ideas about life and about justice and injustice and all that kind of stuff. So most times when you're looking at a situation, or when someone, it might be your sister, it might be your obnoxious boss, pushes your buttons, again, it's hard to believe when you're right in the thick of it, but it's usually not them. It's something that you're projecting onto them. You're often seeing them as something other than who they actually are. So a little trick you can do is you can just use muscle testing or dowsing to just test right away. Just ask the question, this reaction that I'm having to, Bob, my boss. When I react to Bob, am I really reacting to Bob, or is there something, am I perceiving that Bob is someone else, or somehow connected with some other event that doesn't have anything to do with what's happening right in the moment? When I look at Bob, am I actually seeing Bob, or am I seeing someone else? It might be something else. It might be, something from a past lifetime, like a dolphin, or a tree, or who knows what it might be. But bottom line, it's just amazing if you just ask that simple question, how often you're going to find that who you're looking at is who you're seeing when you're looking at them, that's pressing the buttons, is not who's actually standing there in front of you. It's someone else. And you can use this little trick if you get that it is someone else. You can use intuitive guessing and dowsing. Just a simple question, well, who do I think it is? Is it from someone from this lifetime? If from this lifetime, how old was I? What age is this from? And just keep on asking questions and doing yes, no dowsing or muscle testing until you ferret it out. Usually it'll come into your mind. The memory of the who that's actually involved will come into your mind pretty quickly. Now, if it's past life stuff, it's a little hard to get to, but again, you'll often have these intuitive flashes, and you can just say, does it relate to that? Am I thinking that the guy standing in front of me is a Roman guard of some sort, because you're seeing this picture of a Roman guard in your mind? I have had this happen with thousands of clients over the years that I've done sessions with, where they're misinterpreting who they're dealing with, and myself included. So who are you dealing with? Who do you think you're dealing with? Now, let's say you're looking at your boss, Bob, but who you're seeing is a Roman guard from a previous lifetime experience. A technique I call the magic glasses can work very, very effectively. Just, you don't need to know the whole story. You don't need to know what happened with the magic guard. Just put on the magic glasses, just a pair of glasses that maybe have colored lenses. Look at the boss or the problematic person through the glasses, and see see them standing there, and then lift up the glasses. So you'll see the Roman guard. That's who you think is standing there when you've got the glasses on. Now lift up the glasses and just see your Bob. And you say, oh, it's only Bob. It's not the Roman guard. It's only Bob. Now, Bob may have actually had a past life experience in Rome. He may have actually played the role of a Roman guard at some point, but it's not necessarily in any way the Roman guard you had the connection with. It's just he's got some kind of connection or something about him. It might not have anything to do with any experiences he's ever had. It might be the way his hair is cut. It might be that he wears a particular jacket to work all the time, and the jacket reminds you of the particular cloak or whatever that the Roman guard had on, and it sets you off. So try the magic glasses technique. It's very, very valuable and will help you a lot. And again, intuitive guessing to figure out who do you think is actually standing in front of you, because this happens a lot. It happens a lot. It's especially common. The red flag should go up if your reaction to the person that you're reacting to, if someone just regularly pushes those buttons, and your reaction, when you really think about what they're doing that's setting you off, and you just think it through logically, you step back and you say, this just isn't that big of a deal that this is setting me off like that. In cases like that, where logically it just shouldn't be setting you off, it's just that not that important. So why is it setting you off? Because you're looking at someone else. That's why it's setting you off, where it was a big deal. And you're triggering all those memories and all those emotional responses at a subconscious level. So that's number one. Um, uh, Let me look at my notes here and see what else I want to. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to share with you is the other thing that very often is going on. This is the subtle energy thing, is what I call bumping into negative psychic emotional goo. So all of us pick up things from other people in environments. We create negative thought forms ourselves quite regularly, but we can actually pick up exchanges of negative thought forms or copies of negative thought forms from other people, from places. We can pick up disembodied spirits can get attached to us. And a lot of times when you have a reaction that is a strong, intense reaction, what's happening you are bumping up to some of that goo in someone else's energy field. They might be chakra linked to someone who really has got a lot of anger energy, or has the person that you're chakra linked with, that is the button pusher, might be very irritated with someone else in their life, and so you're feeling that irritation that they have in their energy field, and because you're chakra linked with them, you're feeling it almost like you are them, and now instantly you are irritated. And it seems logical that it would be the person standing in front of you that is the cause of that irritation, and that's where your mind goes. But in fact, that's not what's going on. Is a secondary transfer of irritation, kind of like secondhand smoke. So do be aware that there is a lot of everything from again, seeing someone else, someone other than who actually is standing in front of you, bumping up against stuff that has no relationship to what's going on really in the moment with you and the other person. These things are very common, and when your buttons get pushed, they're very often at play. If they're not the cause of the response, they'll be an amplifier of a much calmer or lower level, like anger or anxiety or sadness or whatever response that you might have. They'll greatly amplify those responses and blow them out of proportion. If you have an interest, hopefully this helps you a little bit. Just knowing what I just shared with you about the how common it is to do this projection thing, how common it is for psychic emotional goo or spirits that are hanging out in the other person's energy field, or even in your energy field. And you've got a little bit, they've got a little bit, you come together, and it's like two cymbals in a band. When someone's using the cymbals coming together, and boom, it creates this kind of reaction energetically. And what you do is that coming together wakes up belief codes, and then it creates a little minor explosion or major explosion. So just knowing that can occur, it can really calm you down when you're not in a stuffing way, but it can, if you can say, oh, I'm seeing someone other that's there, and you can figure that out, it will greatly, even if you don't succeed in clearing the belief codes, knowing that it's not actually the person that's standing right in front of you will dramatically calm down your emotional state. And so you have less emotions to stuff if you do go ahead and stuff those. Go online and get some training. There's tons of books and other stuff. I've got seminars on my website in the Sensar Video Vault on how to clear trapped emotions. It's just not that difficult to clear trapped emotions. What we want to try to do is get behind what is causing those emotional responses. So these are some of the things that amplify the emotional responses and that trigger the awakening of belief codes, which are the root cause of the emotional responses. Now, if you want to get deeper, if you want more thorough training on this topic, I'm doing a kind of, beginners can be involved, but it's really an intermediate level Sensar workshop, online workshop on November 30th. And if you know how to do on this topic, it's a dive deep seminar on it's called Stop Letting People Push Your Buttons. And it's all about not clearing, not removing trapped emotions. It's how to prevent that in the first place, how to prevent the reactions in the first place, so the negative emotional states are not actually created, which is the ultimate. But stop letting people push your buttons. That's going to be November 30th. You do need to know how to dowse to get yes or no responses, or muscle test to get yes or no responses to participate in the program and make it worth your while. So if you have an interest in that, click the button, click the link at the bottom of the seminar. There might be a link up at the top of the video as well, and you can learn more about that event. Okay, so bye for now. Hope this was helpful. Happy holidays. Bye.